at number 6 now. Starting at the database. All right, so for the database, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna create a separate network for the database. So let's go back to our EC2 instance. We're gonna do Docker network create DB. So that's gonna be the name. And if I do network list, we see it there, right here, and it's of driver bridge. And after that, we need to create a Docker file for the database. This Docker file is going to be a little bit simpler when compared to, for example, the backend. So coming back to Cloud9, Docker file. So what we need here is, there are a couple of things which are different. So first thing is the image, which is not Alpine 3.12, is 3.9. So we're going to do a from Alpine 3.9. And see what else we have. So we need to run the command app-add. So this is to install MongoDB in that image. MongoDB is going to be our database. So I'm going to run that. And then after that, so whenever you run, that's going to install MongoDB and you're ready to run it. So to run something in a container, you have cmd. And then we're going to do the following. Coming back to the challenge, you see MongoDB --bind all --bind IP all. Let me explain what that is. Again, let me split. Okay. Now, if I run MongoDB without any arguments or any parameters at the end, like this, what's going to happen is that Mongo is going to run fine, but it's going to bind to localhost, right? And when I say bind to localhost, that means that every time you try to connect to the database, you can only do from within that container. Yeah. So the traffic needs to come from the loopback interface, which is localhost. If you want the database to be accessible from different Docker networks, you need to either bind to that Docker network address, or if you specify bind IP all, that's going to be 0000, which means any network, any IP address is able to connect to your database. So when it comes to security, it's good to lock it down as much as you can. So you can either specify the IP of a certain Docker network, or if it's gonna be something running like as a sidecar in the same network stack, you can just remove bind, and that's gonna be just listening on the loopback interface. So yeah, so we're gonna do MongoDB and then bind IP all. I believe that's everything we need. And we're ready to build, push, and then run it. So let's do everything now. So go back to Cloud9, database. So everything's there. So let's do docker build -t series dash dot at the end. All right, and then push. And when we run, we're gonna run in foreground mode. So I'm not gonna specify -d because I want to be able to see something here. And we're gonna specify --net. So that's the network database, or the database network. All right, so it's pushed to Docker Hub. Going back here, I can do docker run --net db, and then the name. Okay, it's downloading. Let's see what's gonna happen. All right, so we see that it's shutting down. If we scroll a little bit up, where is that? Yeah, so non-existent path directory /data/db. So for MongoDB, by default, it expects a folder called, or a path /data/db, which is non-existent in that container because I didn't run like a mkdir here. There's nothing there. What we need to do is to use volumes. Yeah, so that's something that it's very important when it comes to sharing data between the host and the container. So Docker basically had they have right now three volumes types for when we're talking about Linux. First one is just like a regular volume. The other one is something called bind mounts, and the other one is tempfs mounts. All right. So tempfs is not going to be used here because this is for memory only. This is not going to be, files are not going to be written to the file system. So it's either going to be volumes or bind mounts. So let's take a look at the difference here. So let me open this quickly. Storage overview. For volumes, so these are stored in part of the host file system, which is managed by Docker. Yeah. So with what this means is that whenever you create a volume with Docker using Docker volume create, etc., that's going to allocate a folder in the system. You don't know what that folder is, and that's going to be managed by Docker. And in theory, like it says here, non-Docker processes should not modify this path or this part of the file system. And the good thing about this is that you don't know where it is. You just know that it's somewhere in your system, and you can safely just share with the container. And whatever you create inside that container, you know that it's going to show up in the host. Now with the bind mounts, it's very similar, but this is actually the way we used to do before, which is you create a folder in your file system, which means you know what folder is that, and you share that folder, right? And in this case, non-Docker processes on the Docker host can modify them because you know where it is, right? So sometimes we create a folder in the home directory and we just share there. So if you do that, if you know the folder, that's a bind mount. If you let Docker manage, that's something which is just called a volume. And that's what we're going to be using for the database. Yeah, so we want Docker to manage everything for us. So Docker volume create. First, let me list. There's nothing here. Haven't created anything yet. So Docker volume create, and the name is going to be db-vol, I think is the name. Double check. Yep, db-vol. Okay. Let's create that. If I do list again, we can see it there. And after that, we just need to run the database one more time and specify the new volume. So we're gonna learn a new option now. Now, if I run the database, let me pull it up again, the command. There are a couple of ways. There is a -- mount that you could use, but we're gonna use -v, which is, I think is a little bit simpler, right? So with the -v, what you're gonna be doing is you first is gonna specify the name of your Docker volume, colon, and the path inside the container. So the name of the volume in my case is db-vol, colon, and then inside the container, what's the folder that I want to create is /data/db. /data/db. And there is you can specify a third option here, which is whether you want this to be read-only or read and write, right? So you can specify here, but I'm just gonna leave it empty for now. And just before I run this, just remember one thing that it's important to mention. So let me just make this a comment. If I do a Docker volume list, I can grab this name and do Docker inspect db-vol. When you do Docker inspect in a volume, that's where you can see where's the mount point, which means what folder in my system is being managed by Docker. If I grab this, and it's under var, so I need to use sudo. So ls, there is nothing there, completely empty. But the idea is that whenever you run a container and you share this volume, as Mongo it starts writing, there's going to be a bunch of files there inside the container. And because we're mounting this folder in the host into the container, all the files are going to be kind of like sent back to the host. So we're going to be able to see here essentially. So all right, so everything's empty here. This folder is empty. Now let's run this command. So in the db network, specifying that volume. And we see that waiting for connections on port, which means Mongo is running. Yeah. And if I kill this and I do ls, we see that we've got a bunch of things there, and that was created by the container because we mounted that path. All right, so what we need now is, okay, for capturing the flag, we need to inspect the container, which we've done before, the volume, and we need to find a file inside that volume. So going back there, there should be a file with the extension bson, which is this one here, which is a binary encoded JSON version for MongoDB to keep track of collections and sort of things. And the name of the flag is something.bson, which in the case is storage. So storage is our flag for this task. Slope, CTF, storage.